Hello once again, everyone. So this will be our third episode of Wallerstein, and just in time for the holidays. Now, last time we went over weak and strong, and before that we went over length and measure. Now we move to our final kind of concept one, which is going to be Vor, Indes, and Nach. Now, if you're not familiar with Vor, Indes, and Nach, I have a whole video that's just talking about it. But basically what these plays are going to do is the first two, before and after, are pretty much the exact same play, but with the difference being whether or not you have the Vor. So to briefly go over that, the Vor is essentially the initiative, right? It's the person who is causing the other to have to respond and is on the, kind of the attack, versus the defender, if you will, the person who is having to respond to things on the back foot. That means you are in the Nach. Now, you can get deep into it, and sometimes you can be in the Vor by being in the Nach, and it can switch, and blah, 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 blah. That's not what we're worried about today, because for these plays, it's relatively straightforward. So, let's break them down. What's going to happen is, and also joining me for the first time, I believe this is your first time on the channel, this is Chase, who's been working with me for quite a while, and he loves getting abused, so that's all great. Don't worry, Ryan will return, I didn't kill him. But, we're going to start off where we did last time, where we're going to come into the scales, right? Same idea as before. Now what's going to happen is, it says that if he wishes to strike strongly against you to the head, now if we're already in a bind, that can imply a couple different things. The first thing it could imply is perhaps that I am sliding up to the weak and then sliding along. This is a technique that we see quite often. It is referred to as a way to beat the masters, because he's feeling in the bind, he's seeing where I'm going. It seems like I'm about to leave, and then I slide back around. It's a very, very useful technique. That could be it. More likely, however, based upon the follow-up action, I believe it's going to be essentially launching a shield howl from the bind. So what that looks like is we come into this bind, right, we're meeting here, I'm going to stick my thumb up, I'm going to pull on the pommel, and I'm going to just strike along that bind out at his head as I push my hands forward. Very simple to do. So to give you a little bit of the handwork, I'm here, just stick my thumb up, pull on the pommel, shoot along the sword, and pretty much lines up directly with his head. And since the moment he's worried about feeling where I am, it's very quick and simple to do. But that's what we're going off of for leading into this. However, it absolutely could still be just a long edge sliding down. Just don't think that that leads into the responses quite as well. So, what we're told to do is when he does this against me, so we're here, he goes to launch that strong against my head, I'm going to move over to parry, because I have to parry against the tip to make this not hit me. But I'm not going to parry with my long edge. Instead, I'm going to stick my thumb up, and I'm going to turn my sword over, so that way I'm parrying with the short edge. So from my perspective, that looks like this. So my thumb is standing to the inside of the sword, and I'm turning it across to defend myself like that. Now the reason I'm doing this is because it's going to make my follow-up responses easier. You could absolutely still pull these plays off if you do parry with the long edge, but by doing this, I get a couple benefits. Number one, if he wasn't, as strong against me, I can pop straight over and get that thrust. Because I have my thumb on the inside, all I have to do is raise my pommel and I'm lined up with him, versus if I am long edge, I'd have to do an adjustment. And number two is because when he comes around, I'll be using my short edge both times. So I'm just following up with the short edge. We'll show that again. We're down here in the scales. He goes to my head, and I'm just meeting him. We'll also see this later in a way that we'll prep against other wines. This is a universal movement and a very good one to know. So now that I'm here, for this first play, Vor, he is going to start striking around to my head. Now this is presumably a Zwerko, based upon the way it goes. So he's just keeping his hands high, stepping across, and attacking me to the other temple. Now as we know, when someone launches a Zwerko at you, you're kind of stuck being very close together, because you're just trying to defend your head and they can keep launching Zwerks. However, a good counter, and a counter that is also in the KDF, so some of the Kunst des Fechtens, is I am going to essentially Zwerk underneath his Zwerk while moving with him at the same time. This will do a couple things for me. So firstly, we're here, he strikes my head, here. As he goes to strike around, I move with him, stepping sideways. So as he's stepping off this way, I step as well. I pop my arms up as high as I can, and I'm going to Zwerk straight from where I was into his ear, which as he completes his motion, as you see, he can't hit me because I'm jamming his Zwerk. The text calls this an insertion, and there is no better apt way to describe it, right? So, little more fluidly, but not full speed yet, right? boom, over, no problem. Now, I can tell you for certain, this counter is fantastic, because one, it deals with his second Zwerk, so if you're having trouble dealing with Zwerkows at the moment, this destroys them, right? But two, it is a perfect example of Vor. You'd think because he's attacking me first that I am the one who's in the Nach, but I'm not. I accept the fact that I'm in the Nach, and I use this parry to make it so he has to do a certain response that I am optimally set up with to counter. That's having the Vor while being in the Nach, like I mentioned earlier. And that's that moment of switching back and forth that can really, really help your fencing, right? Because if I just went, I'm in the Vor the whole time and tried to Zwerk him first, we're gonna both die, right? I have to accept that he's gonna keep attacking, but I'm gonna counter him on this next hit. So that's really what this play boils down to. So, I'm gonna throw on my mask, and then we'll do it a couple times fluidly. Let's show it from the other side. And as you see, it keeps me pretty much completely safe because I've seeded his action. He could try to do something else, but based upon the feeling from his perspective, it makes the most sense to go around. And our next play shows us that while this will absolutely shut down his Zwerkow, it's not a guarantee that you'll always be fast enough. Right? Even if you're really good at this counter, it's reliant upon you having a good sense of their tempo. So, and just final note on that particular technique, by the way, make sure that when you put the short edge first, when you go to fill the gap, don't try to lead with the tip. All you need to do is pull the pommel and extend your arms as you step, and you'll naturally fill that out. So if you're having a little bit of trouble, try focusing more on your left hand as opposed to your right. But either way, that's Vor. Really, really useful. So let's talk about Nach. And this is one of the reasons I really like Wallerstein, because these two, it's literally the same play. The only difference is whether or not he struck first, right? Like struck with speed. So the text says, same situation, this time as he strikes around, he's faster than me, and I am, quote, obliged to defend, right? So I can't counter him. He's coming around too fast. What I'm going to do is from this position, I'm going to fall over his sword with the short edge and suppress, much like how we did against a weak opponent in the scales. So what that's going to look like is we come to bind, boom, same idea, he comes in my head, I'm over here. He starts working, I'm like, oh, he's way too fast, like he's already here. So I'm just going to move my sword over, right? It's debatable as to whether or not you wanted to step up while doing this, but I'm just going to move my sword over, and I'm going to push down, kind of like I'm doing a Krumpfau. This will keep his blade from hitting me because it will have to slide up into my crossguard at max. Worse, I just push it down. It's out of sight, out of mind. I'm safe for the moment. So here's that a couple times, relatively, fluidly. Boom. I suppress him down. Again. Right? Now, once you've got him suppressed, you're in kind of a weird position, right? His hands are still relatively high, so trying to follow through with the Schnappen like we did last time isn't a great option, because I'm probably going to end up either hitting his guard or his hands, and I really want to be hitting him in the head, right? People have tanked hand hits without noticing, and that's a problem, right? Not saying it won't do damage, just saying if he doesn't notice and kills me, that's a problem, right? But, so what do I do? I could try taking off and hitting him here, but then his sword is still out there and I can't protect him. So what we're told to do is a bit of an odd one. We're actually going to strike him up along his own blade to the outside. Now, normally, I have to tell my students not to do this, but in this case, there's some very specific mechanical advantages that are allowing us to pull this off. So, let's get to that position. We're here, boom, okay? His hands are still high. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on my pommel I'm going to take a slight step out. Sometimes I do this with a 1-2. Other times, if I've stepped a little bit more over, I do it with just a 1. It depends. But I'm going to pull on my pommel, and I'm going to slide up his blade, and that will allow me to hit in the head. The key thing about this is pull on the pommel. Don't try to lead it with your lead hand. If you try that, more often than not, this pommel hand will be too low, and your final strike will look more like this, which is going to get caught on his crossguard / not hit with a ton of power. Versus if I pull with my pommel, I'm now using my core, and I'm extending, and I'll hit up along the outside of his blade. So let's show that again. So we're here, boom, over, suppress, just right up and through. Go ahead and keep your hands a little higher on there. Those are for my hands, right? Boom, through, right here. So see how high his hands are. Now I don't get to suppress him quite as well, but if I pull on that pommel, I just slide right up along his blade and hit him in the head. Versus, if I try to lead this with my lead hand, that's not a good cut. That's not going to do a whole lot. Now, could I turn it into things? Yes, but I want to lock him out in the same way I locked him on the inside, on the outside. Because once I hit him like this, he can't svirk around again. He's stuck, which is great for me, right? This is one of those hits that I can't necessarily say whether or not it'd be a fight ender, but it certainly locks him up and gives him a heck of a wallop. So probably I can then follow it forward with another action. But considering this is meant to be the Nach, right? I've had to defend myself and really buy my time to launch this riposte. It's an excellent example of why sometimes you got to go, okay, no worries, I will get him on the next one, right? So now I'll throw on my mask and we'll do it a couple times. Okay, go ahead and go for me a little bit faster. You see, as long as I maintain that distance, I'm okay. Let's switch sides and do it again. That one especially, I was really worried I might actually get caught. One more time. And that's really all it is. Basically the exact same play, almost the exact same finish, just whether or not I got my strike underneath because I knew it was coming and seeded the field, or if I had to do my strike as a response to him coming around. So a particularly cool thing that doesn't really appear in a lot of other manuals, and I really like it that way. But that was Vor, that was Nach. Let's talk about Indes. So Indes is a thing, man. Indes can be a lot of things. It can be simultaneously, it can be in the moment, which can also mean simultaneously, but can also not. It can be the shift from Vor to Nach. It can be a couple different things. In this case, what it's going to be is the idea of instantaneous, right? We're going to come to bind, he's going to start to do something, and I'm going to go, no, and just shut that down. So, how this is going to work is that what's described to us is we come into the scales, exactly the same as before, but now he's looking to either whine or cut at me or anything that he would do from here. And I'm not going to let that happen. So if it's gotten to this point, too late, right? Waited too long. It's the second that I feel him start to do something, I am going to rush in. I'm going to shove strongly with my sword against his swords and my arms against his arms, push them over his head, and drive him to the ground, okay? Now it says to give a great shove. Sometimes this may be for just clearing distance, in which case I can fall through the cut, but preferably I would like to get him onto the ground, because then, well, he's on the ground. It's a lot harder to fight from there, right? But what this should look like is we're here, I feel him, I just go ahead and fill that gap the second I feel him, right? So once again, no time, right? That one even I was a little bit late. But the point is, the second I feel him start to do something, just boom, in. Now what about the finish? The image shows us I'm taking my sword and I'm shoving forward with the crossguard, and then I'm going to plunge my sword over his neck, much like we did in the throw for Strong last week. Same idea, except I'm going to just crunch him down while moving in against him. So what this should look like in completion is the following. And just keep going. At this point, I've got him at my mercy. It's not the worst thing in the world. So, not every time is going to get a throw, especially on this. Even with the height difference and the weight difference, it's one of those things that when you feel him, you're shutting him down. You could lead into other actions. For example, another Wallerstein vid that I have taken a lot of, it's helped me a lot in interpreting this stuff, is by Martin Fabian. He has a video up on, in their interpretation, rather than going for a throw, they used it to open him up and then cut low. That is absolutely still something I could do, right? So to show that real quick, we're here, I feel him, right? I have opportunity to follow through with a cut. I could enter into a different kind of wrestling, things of that nature. So that option is there. The trick is to just exploit that tempo. And as a training tool, that's a very simple tempo to exploit. You feel him start to move, go forward. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to throw my mask. I'm going to do a couple different ones, depending upon what's available. My objective is to try and just cast him onto his back in the way the text describes. If it doesn't look like it's happening, I will just exit with a cut or a guard or something along those lines, and we'll see what happens. All good? All right. I'm going to show that from the other side. And really, the action, yes, you can turn it into a way to throw someone over. With good practice, you can get it consistent. A lot of times, I'm finding his arms are coming up. I'll just use them, right? I can use those elbows to turn. I can hook. I can do a lot of other things. And that's just fine. You may also find this leads into pommels, or I even led into a cut with a step away. But either way, the important thing is exploiting that tempo. And that's really what this particular play is about. But otherwise, that's the Vor, Nach, and Indes plays. Next week, we'll be tackling kind of into a new area of Wallerstein, where it's less specific lessons and a lot more plays and devices. So that'll be a ton of fun. But thank you very much, Chase, for joining me. And we're going to be going over more fun Wallerstein stuff in last week of this year. So hope you've all had a wonderful Christmas. And if you're watching in the future and it's not Christmas, have a good one this year anyway. Thank you very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.